Dunkirk. You hear that name, and right away, you probably picture heroism, defiance, a miraculous escape against impossible odds. It's one of the most defining moments of World War II for sure, but today we're going to peel back the layers of that legend and ask a simple question. What really happened on those beaches?
Okay, so the story we all know goes something like this. It's the spring of 1940. The British Army, along with their French and Belgian allies, are completely trapped on the coast of France. The German army has them surrounded, and honestly, it looked like total annihilation was just around the corner. And then the miracle happens. This incredible fleet of naval ships and tiny civilian boats, the famous little ships, swoops in and rescues over 300,000 soldiers. But here's the thing. Was it really a miracle, or is the truth a whole lot messier? All right, let's dive in.
Because when you actually start digging into the history of Dunkirk, you find all these weird little inconsistencies. These puzzles that kind of throw a wrench in that simple, heroic story we all think we know.
This is the first one, and it's maybe the biggest mystery of them all. You have the Allied armies totally trapped, completely helpless. The German panzer divisions are right there, ready to wipe them out, and then they just stop. I mean, what on earth happened? Why would they just stop?
Well, the explanations for this famous halt order are all over the place. One theory suggests this bizarre, almost unbelievable moment of sympathy, the idea that Hitler saw the English as kin, as family, and he didn't want to completely humiliate them. Then there's the much more practical theory. The soft sand was actually messing with his artillery shells, making them less effective, so he called a halt to get new fuses. The bottom line is, historians are still arguing about this. There is no simple, clean answer.
And the confusion wasn't just on the German side. Inside the Allied camp, trust was completely falling apart. It led to this really bitter question that people would be asking for decades. Who betrayed whom?
So all this tension came to a head on May 28th. The evacuation is in full swing, and suddenly King Leopold III of Belgium surrenders to the Nazis. I mean, this just blew a massive hole in the Allied lines, and to the British and French, it felt like a complete and utter betrayal. The historical sources we have call him a puzzling and frustrating partner, and he did this against the advice of his own government. The resentment from that decision followed him for the rest of his life.
So all of this, it brings us to the biggest puzzle of all, the one that really gets to the core of the Dunkirk myth. How should we even think about this event? Was it a victory that was snatched from the jaws of defeat, or was it just a defeat, plain and simple? The difference between the mood and the reality is just staggering. Back in Britain, public morale flipped overnight. It went from basically a funeral to a massive party. The newspapers were calling it a victory sent from heaven. But the reality? It was a catastrophic military disaster. So how does a disaster get remembered as a miracle? Well, to figure that out, you can't just look at maps and military plans. You gotta listen to the actual people who lived through it.
See, to solve these puzzles, we have to look beyond the official reports from generals and politicians. We need to find the answers in a different kind of history. One that's told from the ground up.
And that tool is called oral history. So what is it? Well, simply put, it's the process of interviewing eyewitnesses to piece together the past. It's all about capturing the human experience behind the big headlines. And here's why this is so powerful. As the historian Sheila Robotham put it, oral history gives a voice to all the folks who usually get left out of the big official story. The soldiers on the beach, the civilians on the boats, all the people who have been hidden from history.
Let's look at a really famous example of this in action. Alex Haley, the author of Roots. It all started with just a few family stories he'd heard on his grandmother's porch about an ancestor they called Kinte. He took those little fragments of sound and memory to a linguist who figured out the words were from the Mandinka language. Well, that one clue led him all the way to a village in Gambia. And there, a local oral historian, a griot, recited the entire history of the Kinte clan, confirming the story that had been passed down, person to person, for generations. Just incredible.
And this isn't just for big famous battles or epic family stories. Oral history can be used to piece together just about anything, from how a landscape has changed over 100 years to what daily life was like in your neighborhood 50 years ago. It's an amazingly powerful way to see the past.
Okay, so now that we have this tool, this new lens, let's go back to Dunkirk. How can oral history help us make sense of all those puzzles we were talking about earlier?
Now here is where things get really, really interesting. The historian Alessandro Partelli made this brilliant point. He said that what people believe happened is a historical fact in and of itself. The memory, the feeling, the story someone tells, that's as real and as important as what actually happened, because it tells you how people made sense of their world.
And Dunkirk is just a perfect example of this. For the British, the memory is one of a miracle, right? A moment of unity and defiance that saved the nation. But for a lot of the French soldiers who were evacuated, for them, it was just a short break before they were sent right back to France to watch their country collapse. And for the Belgians, the memory is tangled up in this national shame of being blamed by their allies. Same event, 3 totally different memories, 3 completely different truths.
So here's the real takeaway. The miracle of Dunkirk wasn't just some lie or a piece of propaganda. It was a story of hope, and it was built out of the very real relief and joy of the people who survived. It became this powerful national myth because at that moment of absolute desperation, it was the story Britain had to believe to find the will to keep fighting.
So, what does this all mean in the end? Well, when you look at Dunkirk this way, through the lens of oral history, it doesn't just change how you see one battle. It changes how you see the past itself.
What this really shows us is that history isn't some static, finished thing. It's not just a set of dates and facts in a textbook. It's messy, it's emotional, it's deeply human. It's a collection of voices.
And oral history, well, that's our tool for actually listening to those voices. It's how we understand events not just from the top down, but from the bottom up, through the eyes of the people who actually lived them.
Which kind of leaves us with one last thought. If history is really made of stories, and we know so many have been left out of the official version, what stories are waiting to be heard all around us, in our own families, our own towns? What voices have been hidden from history, just waiting for someone to finally ask and to listen?